Sudan, officially the Republic of Sudan, is a country in Northeast Africa. It has a population of 44.91 million people as of 2021 and occupies 1,886,068 square kilometers, making it Africa's third largest country by area and the third largest by area in the Arab League. It was the largest country by area in Africa and the Arab League until the secession of South Sudan in 2011, since which both titles have been held by Algeria. Its capital is Khartoum and it is the most populated city in Omdurman. Sudan is one of those African countries that have greatly suffered from political and civil unrest leading to child abuse and abduction, kidnappings and selling of children for profits. Before we dive in, take a second to hit the subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss out on any of our new uploads. Sudanese War and the Lost Boys. During the Second Sudanese Civil War, children were unable to adequately support themselves and suffered greatly from the terror. Many children were orphaned or separated from their families because of the systematic attacks of genocide in the southern part of the country. Some children were able to avoid capture or death because they were away from their villages, tending cattle at the cattle camps, and were able to flee and hide in the dense African bush. Some of the unaccompanied male minors were conscripted by the Islamic Southern Rebel terrorist forces and used as soldiers in the rebel army, while others were handed over to the Islamic State by their own families to ensure protection, food, and under a false impression that the child would be attending school. Children were highly marginalized during this period. As a result, they began to conglomerate and organize themselves in an effort to flee the country and the war. The hardships. Motivated by the loss of their parents and their need to find food and shelter and safety from the conflicts, an estimated 20,000 boys from the rural southern Sudan fled to bordering Ethiopia and Kenya. Much of the travel took place by foot in large groups, with the boys traveling in single file lines. The journey from South Sudan to the nearest refugee camp could be up to thousands of miles. Travel ranged from a span of weeks to 2 or more years. Often the children traveled with no possessions beside their clothes on their backs. The boys often depended on the charity of villages they passed on for food, necessities, or treatment of the sick. However, most of the travel was in isolated regions with very little infrastructure. Groups of boys were often organized and led by the oldest boy in the group, who could be a young adult or sometimes as young as 10 or 12 years old. The lost boys on this migration were on average extremely malnourished as food was sourced through donations from villages encountered along the way, hunting and theft. They were also vulnerable to heat exhaustion, pneumonia, malaria, and other diseases for which they had little means of prevention or treatment. Additionally, attacks by lions, snakes, and other wild animals were not uncommon. It is estimated that over half of the young migrants died along their journey due to starvation, dehydration, disease, attacks by wild animals, and enemy soldiers. Conditions were made even more dangerous by the SPLA soldiers, who would attack the boys or forcibly recruit them as child soldiers. The SPLA estimated that 1,200 boys were recruited from groups of displaced children, although they deny forcing any of them into conflict. Experts say that the lost boys are the most badly war-traumatized children ever examined. The journey of the lost boys was filled with suffering and unknowns, as the boys really knew the direction they were headed. Lost girls and war consequences inside the refugee camp. When conflict reached the rural parts of southern Sudan, women were affected just as much as the men, only in different ways. Rape was rampant during attacks on villages as the attackers would use rape as a weapon of the war. Women and small children were taken to the north to be sold as slaves. Further on, women and children were often forced into trafficking situations. Once a person was involved in trafficking, it was extremely difficult for family members to relocate them. Upon their arrival in the camps in Ethiopia, the boys were placed into boys-only areas of the camp. Yet, according to Sudanese culture, the girls could not be left alone, so they were placed with surviving family members or adopted by other Sudanese families. Although these family replacement practices provided security for young women, families often exploited the extra pair of hands at home. The girls were expected to fulfill numerous domestic responsibilities that were often very taxing or even dangerous. The expectations of domestic work often prevented the girls and young women from attending school while in the camps, and even when allowed to attend, their housework often kept them behind their male classmates who had time to study. Also, in this way, girls were prevented from earning a formal education, further entrenching them in their inability to sustain themselves. Many girls were physically and sexually abused by their host families, raped by other refugees doing activities such as fetching water or food rations, and occasionally even sold as brides for profit. In each of these examples, the girls were taken in only as a potential profit or benefit to the family. Kidnapping and selling of children. Child abduction has been taking place for centuries in South Sudan, but the kidnapping spiked when nearly 20,000 kids were forced to the front lines due to their country's 6-year civil war. Since the fighting ended, many of the children's soldiers have returned to their families, but those who were abducted for other reasons are still missing, and South Sudan's government has made little effort to find them. Mary Oleo's story. This is Mary Oleo. She hid in the bushes and watched as armed bandits launched a days-long attack on her town to steal their cattle. When the dust settled, she realized that 2 of her children had been taken too. "I almost went mad," said Oleo. "I don't know where they are, or if they are dead or alive." Her children, just 2 of the thousands that have been forcefully taken from their families in South Sudan, were very desperate cases. Once kidnapped, children are often bought and sold for cows and used as brides or laborers. In an act of desperation, Oleo turned to a former warlord named David Yao Yao to help get them back. "It becomes a business," said Yao Yao, now governor of the state that includes Oleo's town of Bibo. "If someone manages to get a child from the neighboring community, he's going to take the child to the market." A decade ago, when Oleo's children were taken, Yao Yao was the leader of a rebel group called the Cobra Faction, one of South Sudan's fiercest anti-government militias. He was responsible for forcing more than 1,700 children, some as young as 10, to join his ranks. It would be years before he disbanded his rebel group and returned his child soldiers to their families. Yao Yao would then use that one act to burnish his reputation as a reformer to get himself appointed as the governor of Boma State. He is now South Sudan's most vocal advocate against child abduction. "We realized that what we did was totally wrong," Yao Yao said. "We need to apply all the efforts to be able to bring back children and return them to their owners." But after 2 years of these efforts, Yao Yao has only managed to return 54 abducted children to their parents. It isn't known if Mary Oleo got her children back, but we hope she did. There you have it, explorers. Sudan's dark past of child abduction, kidnapping, and selling of children. Let us know in the comment section what you think about this practice and whether this small act is still in practice today. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and share with a friend.